I've written a little talk to give today as we're dedicating the Peace Garden here. Uh, it's a very important subject, so I wanted to write to be sure that I say everything that I want to say. This is a historic place, so I want to talk a little bit about history. Does anyone remember what happened on this day, September 11th, 1893? Swami Vivekananda, the first Hindu Swami to bring the teachings of yoga and Hinduism to the West, gave his historic opening address to the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago. You may have thought I was talking about another notorious event that happened on September 11th. Precisely 108 years later, who can forget the images of the horrible attack by fundamentalists on New York and Washington, D.C. on September 11th, 2001. 108 is a very significant number to Hindus. It is the product of 9 planets of Hindu astronomy multiplied by the 12 constellations. Swami Vivekananda, in his historic address, made statements that seem prophetic, precisely 108 years before the terrorist attacks on September 11th. It is as if in his sagely knowledge, the great Swami foresaw the terrible events that were to happen on that day, and as if he wanted to issue the world and humanity a warning. Swami Vivekananda said, "I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all nations of the earth. I am proud to tell you that we gathered in our bosom the purest remnant of the Israelites who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. I am proud to belong to the religion which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation. The present convention, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. Whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now." Very powerful words. I have some trouble to read them without crying a little bit. Since that time, words like karma, yoga, and mantra have become a part of the American vocabulary, and the teachings of peace and harmony are continuing to spread. Phone difficulties. Vivekananda's influence has been great. Like Swami Vivekananda, I can say I am proud to live in America. America has been called a melting pot, where different cultures and religious traditions come together, and they meld to create something that is even greater than its constituent parts. Like Swami Vivekananda, I believe in one Supreme Lord, whose light is reflected in all the great religious faiths. So I love America for the religious freedom which is afforded to her varied citizens. Many of the earliest European settlers came here seeking freedom from religious persecution. Catholics and Protestants alike found refuge on the shores of America at a time in history when this was not always available in Europe. Many people came here for the specific purpose of finding freedom to practice their religion in peace. America's sagacious founding fathers carefully drafted the Constitution to protect and preserve this religious freedom. Since that time, many millions of Jews, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and Taoists, and others have found acceptance here. I am not trying to claim falsely that America has been perfectly tolerant and just. It is indeed deeply unfortunate how the Native Americans have been treated, and a true shame to this great nation that many rights as citizens are still denied to the Native American people. History tells us of witch trials in Salem and fierce persecution of the early members of the Church of the Latter-day Saints, not to mention the terrible institution of slavery, which was not abolished until about 150 years ago in 1865. I do not deny that America has fallen short of the dream of her founding fathers, that all Americans should be able to enjoy liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness, and that all Americans be permitted to practice the religion of their choosing without fear or disturbance. Yet it is natural, when setting out to practice such lofty ideals, that there be some trial and error, and some fumbling until success is attained. America has been founded on noble ideals, and since that time much progress has been made to uphold the rights granted to the people by our founding fathers. I know one wise Tibetan Buddhist monk who has lived in many dozens of countries and on nearly every continent in the world. He settled in America and built a grand monastery in New York. He says that out of all the countries he's visited, he feels none provides greater freedom for his country to none provides greater freedom for him to openly practice and teach his Buddhist religion than America. He is a great teacher and is supremely wise. I think that if anyone is in a position to judge such a thing, it is him, and I'm deeply impressed by his statements. It makes me proud to live in America despite her apparent faults. There is a tinge of fanaticism and fundamentalism in all the world's great religions because people are imperfect. All the world's religions essentially teach the same, however. They teach people to be tolerant and civil toward one another. They teach people to foster the spiritual nature which overcomes the animalistic instincts of the human body and mind. Animals have a nature when frightened to attack or to flee. And many humans react to stresses in the same ways. Religion teaches people to have greater faith and patience and empathy, and to react to others with compassion. Aren't love and tolerance and compassion the core teachings of all the religions? Yet fundamentalism comes when people are insecure and they lack faith and courage to practice their own religion peaceably. When there is insecurity in one's own faith, people will try to convince others of their tradition, as if to give strength to their own convictions. Though all traditions have shared in the terrible attitude of fundamentalism at times, this doctrine is somewhat unique to the younger faiths. The more ancient traditions like Hinduism, Judaism, Taoism, and Buddhism do not see a need to convince others of their beliefs. They understand that people of different cultures do well to approach the Supreme through images and languages particular to their cultural heritage. Christianity and Islam are very new among the world's religions. They are both extremely great faiths, but they have both developed a certain nature of fundamentalism and the practice of trying to convert people to their tradition. This trend has led to unfortunate events in history such as the Crusades and the terrorist attacks of September 11th. But this is not the fault of these beautiful traditions so much as it is the fault of the individuals who practice them. In time, I believe that Christianity and Islam will continue to flourish, and as the centuries add wisdom and faith to the practice of their adherents, the incessant desire to convert others will subside. Yet I am concerned, not convinced, concerned by the modern trends I see in America, and I fear that the judgment of the Christian people here is leading them away from their Christian tradition. So-called Christian people are sometimes very judgmental and can be very forceful in their condemnation of non-Christians and in their efforts to convert others. Jesus stopped people from condemning a woman guilty of adultery. He often reminded the disciples that they should not judge others, but focus on their own spiritual practice. Yet many Christian people today judge and condemn. People are rightly concerned by acts of terrorism, but they are wrong to blame Islam as a faith. Some desire persecution of the Muslim people as a whole. It is important to make a distinction between the acts of men, which are fallible, and the religious traditions, which are divinely inspired. It is no more proper to blame the Islamic faith for the acts of a very few radical fundamentalists than it is to blame the Christian faith for similar historic atrocities. The German Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan are among the many self-proclaimed Christian organizations which carried out wicked and violent acts in the name of their faith. As ridiculous as it would sound to most people to blame Christianity for the acts of these deviant radicals, they do just that when they criticize Islam. This attitude comes from a place of ignorance and from the animal instinct of fear. Just after the terrorist attacks of 9/11 in New York City, many Sikhs were the recipients of people's misguided rage because people could not distinguish between Muslim and Sikh. Yet Islam is like Christianity. It is a religion which teaches peace and tolerance to the extent of allowing oneself to be harmed or even killed. During Christ's time, the Samaritan people were despised by the Jews, and interactions were prohibited by customs. Yet Jesus routinely served and taught Samaritans, the sick, outcasts, tax collectors, prostitutes, and all types of people who approached him with equal love and respect. Jesus did not try to force his teachings on others, nor did he try to control their actions. The ultimate example of this attitude came when the priests came to capture Jesus, and Peter, the apostle, drew his sword, cut off the ear of one servant of one of the priests. Jesus rebuked Peter for his violence and healed the ear of the servant before going happily to be executed. Islam is full of similar stories. Once when the Prophet Muhammad was praying with a group of disciples in a mosque, a desert nomad entered and he urinated. The companions of the Prophet began to scold the nomad harshly. The Prophet reprimanded them, saying, "Allow him to urinate." When the nomad had finished, the Prophet explained calmly and gently to him the sacred nature of the mosque and the reasoning for keeping such filth outside of a holy place. This was the way of the prophets and the saints, not to attack people for their ignorance or their heresy, but to teach them with compassion and patience. Many of the early Christians literally followed the brave example of Christ, who sacrificed their lives for their faith. 10 of the 12 apostles were martyred. Many of the early Christians were killed for their faith. And many of the early Muslims likewise were martyred, like the Sufi saint Mansur al-Hallaj, who was beheaded for declaring, "I am the truth." That's what he said, "I am the truth." The saint was afforded the opportunity, as was Jesus, to retract these mystical statements, but he declined because he felt his duty was to serve the Lord above men. When he had been injured in Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad's companions desired Muhammad to curse his assailants. In response, the Prophet proclaimed, "I have not been sent as one who damns. Rather, I have been sent as an inviter and a mercy." In the early days of these religions, people's faith was greater and their dedication to the ideal of love and tolerance and mercy was stronger. What greater act of tolerance can there be than to allow oneself to be killed? Yet somehow people have come to an opposite way of thinking and acting now. When there is a small insult to one's faith, people feel greatly challenged. When there is violence, they respond with violence rather than turning the other cheek. But violence inspires more and more violence, until someone has the courage to cease the endless cycle. People feel there is no way to resist violence except by violence. Their courage is little and their faith is fragile. They think there is no way to resist hatred except to respond with loathing. They do not realize that the only force in the world that has the power to oppose hatred is love. Water extinguishes blazing fire and love quells hatred. In recent history, the Indian people loosened the oppressive hand of the British colonists without violence. People say it is not possible to oppose hatred and violence with peace and mercy, but we have the historic precedent in modern-day India. The Bible, revered by Christians and Muslims alike, describes love. It says, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking, it does not anger easily. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves. Love never fails." The nature of the Lord is love. It is mercy. But who knows this kind of love today? One sage was sitting on a rock praying. The Lord appeared and asked him if he would pray for justice or mercy. The sage said, "I pray for justice." Then the rock was sitting on him. We should pray instead for mercy for all. We must struggle to love others. It is the nature of the Lord. Mercy is. The only path to come near to Him is by practicing mercy. We as spiritual aspirants have a great duty to uphold the teachings of the sages and the prophets. We must struggle to love others and to be instruments of the Lord's mercy here on earth. We, as Americans, also have a great duty. We owe a lot to our founding fathers. Americans enjoy great freedom, unavailable in other places in the world today, due to the sacrifices of our founding fathers. To honor America and to pay our debt as Americans, we must do everything we can to preserve the religious freedom of all. Some radicals are calling for stopping Muslims from immigrating here. This is un-American. Such people would do well to leave America because their ideals are at odds with the ways of our founding fathers who had worked to preserve the freedom of all to peaceably practice the religion of their choosing. Today, on September 11th, I recall the enlightened words of Swami Vivekananda. I remember also the many who died and who lost loved ones on this day in New York and in Washington, D.C. and Pennsylvania a few years ago. I remember all those in history who have died at the hands of fanaticism. And I recall the teachings of Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad and other great prophets and sages and teachers which extol love and mercy above all else. What will stop this violence but love and mercy? I pray that the perpetrators of these atrocious acts of violence receive the Lord's mercy. I feel the suffering of the many people throughout the world who have experienced loss at the hands of merciless animosity. I feel the disbelief. I feel their confusion, their grief, their sadness, and their rage. And I pray that the Lord's love surround them and fill them with the courage to rise above these hellish feelings, that they may have grace to be merciful. How can we forgive and wish good things for those who have injured us and taken from us those people that we love? By filling the heart with peace and with love, which dispels animosity and darkness. Anger arises from fear and selfishness, from a feeling of entitlement and from a lack of faith and acceptance. It honors the ego of men, but it does not honor the Lord. When we come to peace within, then only can we be peaceful and merciful to others around. And then our lives will serve to increase peace in the world. We performed a Vedic ceremony here today for world peace. We planted 27 boxwoods. They'll be shaped into a hedge as they grow. It will undoubtedly take some work to maintain this garden. I don't know if you can hear me. Should I wait for the train to pass? We planted 27 boxwoods around, which in time will grow into a hedge. It'll take some work to maintain this garden. And as we maintain this garden, we'll have an opportunity to continue to pray for peace for the world. When guests come in the future to enjoy the flowering magnolia tree and crepe myrtle trees, they can sit in the peaceful space and be inspired to carry peace out into their lives, into the world. This is our humble wish for this space here. Today we dedicate this peace garden, that it may inspire peace. Let us meditate together for peace. Our thoughts and feelings do affect the environment around us. They subtly affect the consciousness of other people also. Let us remember this and be mindful of our constant duty to cultivate inner peace, love, and mercy. Let us close our eyes and concentrate on the peace within. If thoughts or feelings arise, do not react, but be aware. Allow the feelings to be. Witness them in silence, and then bring your focus back to the peace within. You are still. You are at peace. Let us visualize this inner state of peace emanating from within. Let us visualize this peace within spreading to fill our interactions with peace. Visualize this state of peace spreading throughout this land, quelling the conflicts between people. Om. Peace is a very great thing to possess. A person can have property and friends and family and even their lives taken away from them, but they are not defeated if they are at peace. Loss and death are inevitable occurrences in life, but they will not bother a person who is at peace. Yet when the divine gift of peace is taken away, a person is defeated. This is the spiritual battle we must all endeavor to fight for our own benefit and for the benefit of society, to maintain peace. May we all strive diligently for peace. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Thank you guys here for your hard work to finish this garden by this date and to prepare for the ceremony and to conduct it. It's gone very well.